a lot of the right wing is upset with Donald Trump for going to this war. Why? I don't know, because he ran on anti-war. He ran on America first, and this looks like it's Israel first. So lots of anger out there. But Trump says, no, you don't have to worry about that. Megyn Kelly's wrong, Tucker Carlson's wrong, Marjorie Taylor Greene's wrong. They're not right wing enough. Really? He says, quote, MAGA wants to see our country thrive and be safe, and MAGA loves what I'm doing. Do they? Every aspect of it. Not just some, every aspect of it. This is a detour that we have to take in order to keep our country safe and keep other countries safe, frankly. And then he says, I think that MAGA is Trump. MAGA's not the other two, referring to Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly. So Glenn, your 2 cents on this.
I mean, I do think it's interesting. Trump has repeatedly defined MAGA as being Trump, meaning MAGA is whatever I believe. So if I believed X yesterday, MAGA was X. If I believe not X today, MAGA is not X. And I think Marjorie Taylor Greene drew the best distinction, which is, yes, that is MAGA. It's a cult of personality that's different from America First, which is about fixed principles that we all thought we were supporting.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that he admitted this is a detour to help keep America safe. But mainly, frankly, he said, frankly, to keep other countries safe. Okay, so it is a detour for MAGA.
Yeah, it's a detour from everything he promised, as we just discussed. And I think every American can see that. This wasn't what we were told we were getting.
Yeah, no question.
And yeah.
All right, so now let me show you the rest of the influencers, and then we'll come back to Glenn and talk about the overall state of affairs among Trump voters, okay? So what are a lot of folks really mad about? Marco Rubio's accidental confession yesterday. Let's show you that.
The second question that's been asked is, why now? Well, there's 2 reasons why now. The first is it was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. It was automatic, and in fact, it bared to be true, because in fact, within an hour of the initial attack on the leadership compound, the missile forces in the south and in the north, for that matter, had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
That was an enormous mistake, because he accidentally admitted what is true. He said Israel was going to attack either way, and if they did it without us and we weren't prepared, even if we are prepared, we were going to lose a lot of American soldiers. So we had to join the attack to make sure that we would be ready for Iran's counterattack once Israel launched. Now, of course, the other thing you could have done is said, no, you're not the boss of us. We're the boss of you. We've given you over $300 billion. You're asking us to spend billions upon billions of dollars on this war. No, you go when we tell you to go. And that's what Donald Trump is pretending today. He's like, oh, yeah. I mean, I bossed them around. I told them nonsense. Tom Conn's admitted it, Marco Rubio's admitted it, Caroline Leavitt has admitted it. Israel was gonna go, and they seem to have used that as a threat against us. We're going, and a lot of your troops will die if you don't come with us. So now you say, well, Cenk, yes, but you're a progressive, and Glenn's on here, and I don't know what he calls himself these days, but he's certainly been anti-war his whole life, right? But how about the right wing? Well, let's take a look. I mean, Matt Walsh is definitely right wing. He says, so he's flat out telling us that we're in a war with Iran because Israel forced our hand. This is basically the worst possible thing he could have said. That is very true, and Matt works at the Daily Wire, at least for now. So that is a hell of a thing for him to say. Sagar Enjeti, one of the hosts of Breaking Point, says 3 days ago it was an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory to say Israel was dragging the US into war with Iran. Today, the Secretary of State said Israel was going to strike no matter what, and that the US had to join the war. So the noticing continues. Now we go to Turning Point USA. Interesting, Savannah Hernandez says, Crazy to hear Marco Rubio say that Israel knew that if they attacked Iran, the United States and our servicemen were going to pay the price, but they didn't care and force our hand, leading to the death of Americans. Infuriating to hear. That is certainly true, but if you think she's infuriated, get a load of Marjorie Taylor Greene.
What is happening to the man that I supported, you supported, the man that denounced what happened in Iraq, the man that said no more foreign wars, no more regime change, promised it on the campaign. JD Vance promised it, Tulsi Gabbard promised it, all of them promised it, and we're a year in, and we're in another war, and we've got American troops being killed.
That is absolutely right. And so I'm gonna get to mainstream media in a second, but Glenn, we are now being told that Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and by the way, let me tell you, Megyn Kelly said this is Israel's war, and that's part of why Trump was so mad. And Tucker Carlson said that the war was, quote, absolutely disgusting and evil. But we hear that they're not right wing and Marjorie Taylor Greene's not right wing. The only person who's right wing is Donald Trump, and even if he changes his opinion, like the entire right wing changes with it, even if it's on either side, as you mentioned earlier. So what do you make of this? Is this a real MAGA civil war? Because some in mainstream are saying it's not. And who comes out the winner of all this? Not now, but later, at the end of all this.
Well, there are clearly major figures in the conservative movement, let's just call it that for the moment, who are not just speaking out with some hesitation or resistance, but are vehemently condemning this war, including the people that you mentioned. And Tucker, has one of the largest audiences in the country. Megyn Kelly has a gigantic audience and is very well known from all that time she spent on Fox News and then at NBC. And you have Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie and people inside the Republican Party who are not the majority. The majority is still petrified of defying Trump. He can destroy their careers like he did with Marjorie Taylor Greene, like he's trying to do with Thomas Massie. You know how much money Miriam Adelson and Trump's other AIPAC donors, billionaire donors, are pouring into that Kentucky district to get rid of Thomas Massie out of Congress because of this and a couple of other issues of dissent, including on Epstein. But I know Tucker very well. I've been on his show a million times over the years. Megyn, same thing. Marjorie Taylor Greene as well. And I just, maybe I'm being naive, but I've seen their evolution. It's been gradual on this issue. None of them ever talked about Israel prior to October of 2023. In fact, Jake, I had Marjorie Taylor Greene on my show once where she was very outspoken on the issue of Ukraine. And she was saying things like, American women can't afford baby formula for their babies. Why are we sending billions of dollars over to Ukraine, which is a position I shared. And then I asked her, but what about Israel? We sent billions to Israel. Doesn't that same rationale apply? And she wasn't quite ready yet to talk about that. She was scared, she stumbled around.
Don't forget, Noble Mobile saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell, why am I paying so much to Verizon and AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch because same phone, same number, same contacts, literally nothing changes. TYT.com/switch, TYT.com/switch. All right, we'll be right back.
And ultimately said something like Israel's an important ally. This has been a slow evolution and you can hear it in their voices. I mean, betrayal is a very powerful human emotion. When you get led to believe, and I think a lot of people experience this first, I would say I did with President Obama, where you get led to believe that these are people who believe in certain things, are going to do certain things, and then they end up just completely, once they're in power and don't need you anymore, reversing themselves and embracing the very policies that they promised that they were going to uproot. The anger and betrayal are very genuine emotions, and I think you're seeing that inside MAGA. I think the most interesting figure here is JD Vance. He cannot in any way be seen as opposing Trump or criticizing Trump because he believes that to get the nomination, he needs Trump behind him. But he can't also tie himself to a disastrous war because if that sinks, and it looks like it will, I think it will, already is, that too will destroy his future prospects and open up the lane for like a Thomas Massie or Marjorie Taylor Greene, or maybe even a Tucker Carlson to run on this genuine anti-war, anti-interventionist, populist ideology that Trump promised to run on, but then quickly abandoned. And JD Vance has to be tied to Trump and he could easily go down with him.
Yeah, so Glenn, you've had a lot of interaction with the left and the right. Just a quick, fun, tangential question. What do you call yourself? And by the way, tell the audience where people can find you too.
You know, I for the last 3 years I've been doing this live nightly show on Rumble. I ignored all my friends who have done live nightly shows who told me don't do it. It's extremely draining, and they were absolutely right. So I'm back on Substack where I'm doing a lot of writing, doing some videos as well. Just kind of doing the journalism I like to do, primarily on Substack. And that can be found on social media and YouTube and the like. Even back in the day, when I was on your show a lot, defending you, we were talking a lot. I never really embraced those labels because I know they mean so many things to so many different people. I honestly do not believe I have changed my core ideology ever. All the causes that I've defended very consistently. Obviously, some of them have a lot in common with the left: free speech, anti-security state, anti-surveillance, anti-war. But there have been things that places the left has gone that I haven't been comfortable with. So even back in the day and even now, I try really hard not to embrace those labels. In a way, they can be obfuscating because they mean different things, but also they can imprison you. Like you could say, oh, I planted my flag on the left, I said I'm on the left, now I have to believe this, and now I have to pursue this view. And I just want to be freer in terms of my ability to see things and understand things and try and do as honest a job as possible and let other people apply those labels.
Yeah, number one, that's fair. Number two, we were kidding around about how you're in Anna's seat today, and you are filling that seat appropriately because Anna has come to the same conclusion. Like she can't stand the labels. She's like, let's just talk about what's true and leave it at that.
Yeah.
Right. So okay, I now want to move on to mainstream media back on this point. So they say, well, look, we don't even know that there is a civil war. Mediaite wrote an article about like, oh no, this is all a mirage. In reality, everyone agrees with Mark Levin and Laura Loomer. Like that's the majority of the right. And then of course they happen to mention one other factor that they say is the real reason people are anti-war. Isaac Shore in this case writes, scratch beneath the surface of what Carlson Fuentes and their audience and many Democratic elites, including those who pose as newsmen, rhetoric, and you will find that their worldview is shaped by an anti-American instinct that animates their every move and or an unhealthy ancient obsession with Jewish influence, both of which are an anathema to both MAGA adherents and traditional conservatives alike. Then you move on to Axios Caputo, I believe Barack Ravid, and they write, the picture critics are painting of a US reluctantly pulled into a war by a smaller ally obscures the deep coordination between the two countries in the weeks before the strike. So they're trying to say, no, this has nothing to do with Israel commanding us to go to war now. They've been commanding us to go to war for a long time. I'm not sure that's the win you think it is, but then of course they have to throw this in as well. Anti-Israel voices on the right, as well as openly anti-Semitic influencers who've clawed toward the mainstream in recent years, claimed vindication about what's happened. So Glenn, there's two things here. One is, they're going back to the whole everybody's an anti-Semite if you oppose Israel's wars. That's very classic mainstream media 101, right? But there's also a second part where it feels like the bubbles have never been thicker and more impenetrable. Like the establishment truly believes that Mark Levin is the standard bearer of the right wing and that Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly are fringe characters. Marjorie Taylor Greene Thomas, a fringe. The mainstream is all about Laura Loomer and Ben Shapiro and that and all of the Tom Cottons of the world and the Marco Rubios, et cetera. And they truly believe that, right? And in the online world, we think those guys are jokes and that Tucker and Megyn, et cetera, are way more popular in the future of the Republican Party, whether you're a Republican or not, or the future of MAGA, America First, et cetera. So where do you come out on that?
I defy anybody. I mean, I would put good money that anybody who tried for even weeks, every day, if you woke up early and did it all day to find someone under 70 years old who knew who Mark Levin was, I don't think you could, unless you're people like us, we're under 70, thankfully still, who are extremely, just constantly tied into political discourse and online discourse and the like. But otherwise, Mark Levin represents this dying conservative mindset. That's the thing that is scaring people the most. And this isn't my own speculation, Shank. You've seen the polling numbers as much as I have. Every demographic group, by a majority, is now a group that harbors negative views of Israel, including not just young conservatives like 18 to 24, but 18 to 49. All conservatives under 49, under 50, if you poll them, more than 50% have negative views of Israel. And this is one of the reasons Charlie Kirk, as Megyn Kelly has talked about and others, started to become a lot more open to being very critical of Israel, to questioning US support for Israel, because he was representing a generation, young conservatives, who he knew he wouldn't be able to represent. Nick Fuentes would have stolen that whole group from him had he continued on this adamantly pro-Israel path. And I think it's part of why Megyn and Tucker and all these people understand that there's a lot more space inside the conservative movement, because it's not just a handful of podcasters the way like Zionists like Isaac Shore or Barak Ravid. And I always find it amazing that, this overnight star of media who tells us about Israel is actually an Israeli who served in the IDF until 2024 in the reserves and in the intelligence unit 8200, which is one of the most notorious intelligence units. So a lot of it is coming from this kind of mindset that I don't think is aligned in any way with the broad public opinion of these people. Now, people who don't pay attention to politics that much and are Republican still like Donald Trump. So they're not going to quickly and immediately object to or vehemently oppose a war that they know Donald Trump has decided to initiate and is defending. But these things trickle down, and that's the way we've seen these changes in public opinion. I think the people are saying, oh, Tucker, Megyn, these are irrelevant outliers, even Nick Fuentes, all these people, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't think they believe it. I think they know their days are numbered, not just on the right, but on the left, even among Democrats of all ages. It's becoming much more anti-Israel. And that is a trend that I do not believe will ever be reversed. And I think they know that as well.
Yeah, and guys, think about it, right? So their thesis is that the only reason Glenn, me, everybody in the anti-war movement opposes the war is because we're anti-Semites who are opposed to Israel, right? Okay, but if that's true, but there used to be positive views of Israel in the Democratic Party, now it's gone to like 90% against. They're very, very positive, almost universally positive among the Republicans now. They've lost about 50%. I mean, and among the under the 50-year-olds, they're totally gone. Independents are moved to 70 to 80% against what Israel is doing. So did the country become anti-Semitic overnight? Or I know this is crazy for mainstream media. Could it be that we are rationally looking at what Israel has done over the last couple of years and going, oh no, we don't want any part of that. We don't want to pay for a genocide. We don't want the endless wars. And now it's kind of become obvious to us that yes, they're contributing to 94% of Congress, and they're the #1 lifetime donor of Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Mike Johnson, Hakeem Jeffries. I could be here all night. There has been a great awakening, and it doesn't have anything to do with anti-Semitism. It has to do with American sovereignty.